Hi everyone, and welcome to the predictions based on astrology for the week of August 5th, 2019. First, let's quickly recap the predictions and what had happened last week. Predictions for the stock market direction. Last Monday, I thought that the market would go up, and the direction, I guess, was mixed. The Nasdaq went down, Dow Jones was up. On Tuesday and Wednesday, I thought the market would go down, and it did. On Thursday, I thought the market would go up, and it actually went down, although my prediction had only I was only giving it about 55% chance that the market would go up. So the market did go up at first, but then dropped sharply on tariff news. And on Friday, again, I was wrong. I thought that the market would go up, and it actually went down. Some other ongoing predictions that I had were related to basically increased focus on like oil, pharmaceuticals, drugs, and poisons and all that stuff, basically related to Neptune's influence. And while Neptune is still in square to Jupiter, we will have, again, increased focus on these kind of events or topics through about, I'd say, early October. And so last week we had news from Germany about the record-breaking drug bust, where they have basically seized about 4.5 million of cocaine worth about 1 billion euro. So that's, I guess, record breaking. And again, right now we have this slowly developing Jupiter Neptune square, with Neptune being in its own sign, and of course Jupiter being in its own sign. And this definitely implies kind of a increased or large scale events related to both of these planets, such as international affairs or things kind of going overboard, some really large scale, I would say maybe hurricanes coming up in September, anything that affects topics related to both of these planets. So issues with immigration, influx of maybe illegal immigrations in some countries, or just like issues that are growing and mushrooming to the extent where they need to be dealt with. So something that needs to be transported or over border, or needs to be legalized, or vice versa, dealing with some illegal problems that are, again, on a really large scale, that really need to be contained, because again, Jupiter makes things kind of mushroom and balloon out of proportion with square, meaning that things are not going very smoothly and they need to be contained, or else, again, things go over border literally and flood everything literally, which right now these two planets actually are, like I said, in a square, but the square is not exactly precise, and it will actually become more precise come September, where I would expect to see more news about, again, oil, poisons, water pollution, hurricanes, potentially again affecting oil production, or some chemical either maybe explosion or chemicals just leaking into water, things kind of getting out of control, but as well as like long distance shipments and international travel being affected. So going back to the last week's news real quick here. So weather, I did predict that there will be a continuing heat wave in areas that we already had seen increased heat, such as especially Europe and US, and I guess some in Siberia and Russia. And basically the explanation for it astrologically that I see would be that we have a lot of planets in fire signs, and they make actually harmonious aspects to each other, which means that there is nothing really stopping it, and this influence, they kind of continue edging each other on, so to speak, or rather enhancing each other's influence, and particularly Mars and Jupiter trine. Again, fire with fire, in Leo, Mars and Leo. Leo, of course, is ruled by Sun, so more of that sunny weather, more fire, Mars is fire, basically, trined by Jupiter, and Jupiter senses kind of blessings through this harmonious trine, meaning, say, go on, Mars, go ahead and, keep that fire, firing. And Mars, of course, Mars also has to do with things like weapons, military, any sort of aggression, but as well as athletic abilities and being, taking on risks, but also succeeding because it is able to sort of do what it does best, being, taking risks, like I said, and being energetic and with support from Jupiter in its own sign, it is able to continue to sort of facilitate that increase of fire energy, which again, in some places maybe they don't want that much anymore, but we did have continued sort of heat in most places, not most, many places of the world, and news from Russia specifically that they have massive wildfires raging there and they're trying to contain them. And they're also, of course, ongoing heat wave in US. Let's see, and let me go back to the screen I was just at. That successfully closed. So let's see, and ongoing, again, another influence has to do with Saturn conjuncting Pluto in Capricorn, which again is something that's going to be in place in 2019 as well as in 2020. In fact, in 2020 it will be even stronger, especially in January. And another, I guess, round of sort of increased energy will be again in September, so September or something. It looks like a month that will be fairly intense again. So those conjunction of those two planets in Capricorn typically coincides with things like increased earthquakes, volcanic activity, mudslides, anything to do with like old buildings collapsing, old structures collapsing, as well as maybe a long-term project. So if something were to be built like a dam or really large tunnel or bridge, again, if things are really done very thoroughly with a lot of planning and take a long time without being rushed, that actually these structures may also stand for a long time. So that would be a positive way of sort of using that energy, as well as any sort of geopolitical changes, so redrawing of the borders, and basically changes in the government, old leaders passing away, new leaders coming, old power, sort of shifting, or power shifting from some of the old structures into the new ones. So we have a lot of that going on, and we have some 6-point plus earthquakes, including one near Fukushima, as well as one in, I guess, Vanuatu in Indonesia. And we have ongoing, riots in Hong Kong, and we have some tensions, geopolitical tensions between like Pakistan and India, and US and China. So that is basically these long-term ongoing, I guess also with Iran. So these are the ongoing long-term sort of geopolitical tensions that will, like I said, will not go away anytime soon. This will continue through at least 2020, and may result indeed with redrawing of the borders. Unfortunately, some people may suffer in the process. And for last week specifically, in addition to hot weather, I also predicted increased focus on things like firearms and explosions. Again, this has to do with Mars, and Mars receiving a lot of sort of supportive aspects, which means that anything that has to do with Mars, such as, again, like sports, for example, racing, firearms, military, will continue to sort of expand, or we'll hear a lot about it in the news. And unfortunately, again, the positive aspects would be, or manifestations would be, some athletes maybe, breaking records and achieving some, medals or something like that, or achieving some recognition. But what we had actually were lots of news about various traumatic events. We had news on the July 28th about the police responding to an active shooter at California Food Festival. On the 29th of July, there was news from, I guess, Afghanistan about the suicide attack that killed 20, injured 50. On the 29th of July, there was news from Brazil about prison riots, killing 52 people, 16 of them were decapitated. On the 30th of July, there was news about Pakistani military plane crashing in a residential area. The fire, I guess, had broke out and 17 people were killed. And I also had actually predicted separately for the 29th, so the day before this actual crash, there will be some surprising developments that may involve aerospace, so like airplanes or any sort of rockets, etc. And so then, of course, in the US, in early August, the 3rd and the 4th, we had two unrelated, I don't know if they're related, I guess unrelated shootings that unfortunately killed about 30 people total. And as I said, unfortunately, that if we're going to experience more of the negative manifestations, the energy of Mars will continue to be strong even this week of August 5th. So news about sort of guns, weapons, again, this could be from the perspective of, not perspective, but rather from the position of maybe some laws involving, weapons, etc., or sales, maybe international sales of weapons. Those news will continue coming in, and this will continue this week as well. So predictions for last week. Let's see, I also made predictions specifically for Monday, July 29th, that there may be some surprising developments related to like finance, currencies, and also communication and transportation services or businesses experiencing delays, disconnect, or conflict or some problems of some sort. And we had news last Monday, indeed, that messaging app Slack was down in many parts of the world. There are also some news on 29th about several banks, including JP Morgan and Barclays, facing UK class action over forex rigging. And on the 30th, there was news about Capital One bank suffering major, hack that exposed like personal data of 100 plus million people. And I also made predictions for China, so there's some ongoing predictions for China experiencing potentially some, difficulties. And specifically for last week, I predicted that there may be increased focus on international relations, contracts, and agreements, and that the country of China may experience this as some sort of like attack, either through sort of somebody being aggressive towards them in negotiations, which I guess it would be U.S. And or the country itself being kind of aggressive and treating sort of their partners in negotiations kind of a little bit more aggressively. And as well, there will being some ongoing behind the scenes kind of either threats or blackmail or some hidden, communication or some basically spying, manipulation, etc. And we had news that on the 1st, I think it was on the 1st of August, where U.S. imposed new tariffs. And as we've seen at the beginning of this week, week of August 5th, is that then China had, retaliated by devaluing yuan, and we had a really large market drop on Monday. So basically, even though my prediction, was for last week as far as it being focused on manipulation, I also made prediction for this week and moving towards, the weekend. And I predicted for, and I'll get into it in a second as well, for China specifically, that on the August 9th through 11th, that there will be focus on the currency manipulation. And this whole news about yuan being devalued happened more on August 5th, so sort of in between these two predictions, I would say, but that's kind of an ongoing influence, and I'm kind of artificially breaking it down because, again, my predictions are based on the week to week, but kind of looking at the larger picture. We have several planets like Mars and then Sun and Venus going over the area of natal chart, and for China, where it has to do with negotiations and partnerships, as well as they're transiting over China's Mars and Pluto, which have to do with, again, feeling attacked, attacking, being aggressive, taking risks, as well as dealing with really massive pressure, manipulation, or being manipulated or manipulating something themselves from basically literally through military means, through some sort of spying and hacking, or just kind of doing illegal things, and or which is where that prediction that is coming up still for August 9th through 11th, through financial means. So like I said, I think it's all tied in. So we already had, some of it coming up with basically the tariff war continuing last week, as well as this yuan devaluation this week, and something that will continue, like I said, with potentially new developments coming up through the week of August 5th and into the weekend, and even on August 9th through 11th, there will be additional news regarding China and US trade war, and particularly focusing on finance or rates or currency devaluation or some sort of a hidden secretive things that we may not necessarily hear about in the news, or we hear about them in the news, but they will come up as a result of something that may already had happened previously, but it was kept secret. So let's see. So then I also made a prediction that I have not seen either come true, or maybe I just didn't, look hard enough. But I thought that on July 30th, that there would be some sort of public conflict between like a famous male figure and a female figure about potentially like safety and security of children or homeland. And I honestly didn't see that. Again, I am not looking into it super hard, but I have not seen it in any sort of headlines that I was just skimming through. So rolling into this week, as I mentioned already, just kind of going back to China, just because we just finished on that. There are these transits going through the chart of China, and that they will be especially strong on the 5th and 6th of August, and then again August, I would say 8, 9, where the focus is on international relations agreements, and in the beginning of the week, 5th and 6th, it maybe is more focused on like strong leaders or threats, military threats, or feeling attack, and kind of these strong words, making risky moves. But then towards sort of the end of the week, 8, 9, and then also 9/11, that the focus will be switching towards sort of finance, and either it may have to do with, say, large sales of weapons, or spending, investing into weapons, or investing into some sort of large agreements or large contracts that again either may have to do with actual weapons themselves, sports, and or may have to do with that investment being used as a weapon of sort of to force their partners or force their enemies to do something. So basically the finance becomes a tool, but it's not being used directly, but it would be something that again there's a manipulation, either something through spying, hacking, like I said, manipulation. Either China feels themselves pressured, or they themselves exert such influence through these kind of a hidden means, and or there may also be focus on literally like recycling, nuclear weapons, nuclear power, anything that has potential for causing like mass sort of destruction or having massive effect. And specifically on 9th through 11th, there may be additional news on like rates, loans, debt, currency, value manipulation, and some possibly illegal financial dealings. Like I said, this already sort of in a way came through on August 5th, so a few days before this prediction. But what I'm thinking is that there may be some sort of a follow-up event, and we already had US declaring China as a currency, officially declaring them as a currency manipulator, so perhaps this will be some sort of a follow-up from that towards the end of this week. And my general prediction for the whole week is that the value of gold will be going up, and I do see throughout pretty much the entire week, and I do see on next Monday, Tuesday, August 12th, 13th, that we may see a potentially large move in gold and or silver as well. And I would imagine that there would be most likely a drop. So potentially gold going up the entire week and then dropping Monday and or Tuesday of next week, 12th, 13th. So other ongoing predictions are, like I said, increased potential for large earthquakes, collapses of old buildings, increased focus on oil, pharmaceuticals, navy, beverages, chemicals, things like that, as well as long distance shipments, international sort of movement of people or goods, international affairs, etc. And let's see, and there may be some shift again coming up early next week, where we will also have Jupiter that's been retrograde turning direct on the 12th. So that's another kind of a something to look forward to, that there are other aspects coming up. So early next week there may be some new developments regarding either international regulations of something, or legal contracts or laws literally having to do either with international shipments, international trade, or legal status of certain people, groups of people, or who can travel somewhere, or maybe if there's a legal agreement pending, it may be either reversed or changed or finally signed. So definitely something maybe coming, I wouldn't say to conclusion, but maybe direction, maybe change, and or there'll be like a new spur of activity along anything to do with, like, again, international activities and or legal status, like maybe, with the India and Pakistan, maybe if there's some sort of a change in some agreement, or like in India, I guess they're looking to, or maybe have already basically revoked, I think, the autonomic status of the Kashmir. So something to do with, again, changes in legal status and or changing in shipments. So if the shipment was proceeding and maybe they had permission to get to a port, maybe now it's denied, or vice versa. If they were denied, now they will be able to go through. So that would be early next week. But again, already at the end of this week, we may see some changes kind of gearing up for that to be able to happen early next week. Let's see, for China, continuing sort of ongoing difficulties where there's increased probability of like earthquakes, disasters, focus on like pollution, secrets, deception, long distance transportation, etc., international agreements. And the strongest influence this week was August 5th, which I'm recording this on the actual evening of August 5th, so I guess that had already sort of come true, but that is an ongoing influence that will be in place for like months. So for direction, on Monday I actually predicted the market may possibly go up, 55% chance. I did see that, and I did say it in my blog at plastunka.com, where I have already posted it on Sunday, that the in the morning the market may go down, but I did expect it to recover by the afternoon. Clearly it didn't. There was a pretty massive drop due to, again, China devaluing yuan and it affecting global markets and US markets. Let's see. And I do expect that the whole week news will have more news than usual about international relations, agreements, as well as anything to do with like law, legal sphere, such as diplomats, judges, laws, like I said, borders, control, immigration, long distance travel, something maybe legalized or prepared to be legalized, or vice versa, maybe some sort of a legal agreement maybe cancel, especially towards the end of the week and early next week. Gold prices will likely be going up the entire week through, early next week. And there may be some strong focus specifically on the August 8th through 9th on the profits from international shipments, international trade. So a lot of like finance related sort of news, either earnings or something that is allowed to go through, like the sale is going through, or money is able to move. It maybe previously it couldn't move, and now suddenly, a large sum of money is going through, or any sort of international money transfer. So all of that. So I already mentioned China. Let's see, for August 6th, Tuesday, I think the market may go up about 60% chance with increased news that continue about hot weather, rising military tensions, fighting, explosions, fires, shootings, and accidents, especially involving something that's overheating, like, literally fires, explosions, overheating engines, as well as ongoing protests. But for sports, there may also be increased focus on like racing or, running, as well as fighting, as in like sports. And again, things may kind of go out of control because there's just too much energy flowing around. And or if somebody's really focused and may achieve and break, like I said, records of some sort. And also on Tuesday, there may be unexpected or surprising developments involving financial institutions, banks, insurance companies, loans, rates, debts, taxes, tariffs, and things of that nature. So some project or service may abruptly be canceled, or a new project may begin that is surprising. There was some sort of a turn of events that has been unforeseen or unexpected, again related to finance specifically, or tariffs or taxes, etc. Wednesday, August 7th, market may possibly go down, 55% chance, possibly some minor concerns about loans, rates, debt, taxes, tariffs, and these may bring the market down. On Thursday, Friday, I think those will be days of like high optimism, especially about the international agreements or earnings from international trade or shipments going through, or money is able to be transferred. And so I give it a fairly high percent chance, 65 to 70% chance of both Thursday and Friday that the market will be going up. And or like I said, something legally signed, or people are able to move through now, like some groups were able to get some sort of legal status, maybe now they can, or some immigration centers get more funding. So basically positive news for any sort of either international agreements or international affairs, long distance travel, maybe like a railroad project or some sort of project that requires, is involved in long distance shipment or transportation, gets additional funding or is shown to be profitable. So some trade, I would say, should improve, or shipments should improve, or ability to ship something should improve. In the US, August 8th may see increased focus on, again, financial institutions, bank rates, loans, debt, taxes, insurance, tariffs, and there may be some decisions about changes and increase of negotiation, news about contracts and negotiation with international partners. And at the same time, August 8-9, there's increased sort of energy in China's chart, again, with focus on the international relations, contracts, and agreements. And the focus there is on making some risky moves or aggressive moves, and that those would yield some profit. And also focus on like weapons, military, either threat, or sports, or gambling, or basically going for it, taking a tough stance, or doing something aggressive and risky, but that may actually bring profit, or risking earnings, again, because there's this feeling of like, okay, we have to do it, it's too much of a threat, or it's like the time to go for it and be brave, basically, and even if it means risking some money. But I think in this case, the gamble, whatever they will do, may end up being profitable for China. So Friday, like I said, again, an up day, positive, optimistic day. At least that's what I expect. And for China, again, continuing focus on finance, but finance and agreements, but there was a strong element of massive pressure, some sort of a threat, blackmail, spying, hacking, currency value manipulation, and or even literally entering some illegal financial dealings, or maybe being accused, or being, sort of a justice will be called to kind of stop something that's illegal, and dealing with, again, finance. And next Monday and Tuesday, August 12th, 13th, I'm repeating myself now, I think that the gold and possibly silver may actually go down. So either way, reverse direction from what it would be for the most part of this week. And just a quick glance ahead for September. I mentioned it before in both my annual predictions video that I have, and as well as some previous, I think, videos. The September pretty much from the 2nd to like the 28th, with certain periods, and I have that specifically written up on my blog, that there will be significant moves, most likely in oil, as well as international relations, shipments, and weather related to anything like too much water, maybe flooding. I would guess it will be a hurricane season in the US. We had previously seen when the similar aspects were kind of more exact, there were some issues in New Orleans, so maybe, again, that's in the Gulf of Mexico there, so we will, maybe possibly that area might be affected, as well as pretty much anywhere in the world, and it may involve also some sort of attacks or leaks of oil, leaks of gas, or attacks that lead to, exploding maybe oil pipes or something like that. And that may cause oil prices to go up, and or just lead to some water pollution, for example, which may in turn potentially affect shipments over water, especially, or shipments of oil, or shipments of anything that's, again, Neptune related, such as, any sort of chemicals, pharmaceuticals, gas, increased news about, some pharmaceuticals, especially those, I guess, that have to do with like either being in a liquid form or dealing with addictions. So any to do with like, like we had this cocaine bust, so there'll be more of those potentially, and or news about, again, pharmaceuticals that have to do with addictions or dealing with addictions, or with news about alcohol. Like I think we had a similar manifestations where I guess there was some sort of a plant that was either stock a lot of like bourbon or something like that that exploded. So things of that nature where you have something that there's some problems related to, again, these Neptunian areas, which includes alcohol, drugs, etc. And at the same time, we may also have increased geopolitical tensions, as well as earthquakes, mudslides, so all of the above. So maybe there's flooding and the walls kind of cave in and old buildings fall down, or there's an earthquake and there's tsunami, and that obviously triggers some additional problems and leads to some pollution. So that is definitely something coming up, and I think it's going to last through like early October. I remember vaguely, I think I said somewhere that October 5th also looked pretty stressful. So basically, whatever is ongoing right now in August, we may see additional sort of build-up of these tensions, and September is one of the more tense months in 2019, and another sort of like fairly stressful month, especially geopolitically or in terms of earthquakes, will be January of 2020. So that's it for me, and I've been talking long enough as usual. So hopefully you enjoyed this and you'll come back and check out my videos next week, and everybody have a great week. Okay, catch you guys later.